So in this tutorial, we're going to start adding some content to the left and right division. So in the left division, we're going to play with a table, and inside the table, we're going to put some images. And then in the right-hand side, we're just going to put some text, and we'll align the text and change the font and so forth using CSS. So we'll start with the text because it's a little bit easier. So here's our content right division. And at the moment, we have just some words in there saying this is right. I'm going to delete those words, those placeholder words, and place a bit of space in my content division, making sure the opening and closing tags are in line. And then I'm going to tab across because I have something nested inside. And I'm going to create my first heading, which is an H1 tag. And I'm going to start with my sentence. I'm going to press File, Save. You can see that I get a nice big heading in that right section of my division, in the right division. Underneath my header, I'm going to put a paragraph. I'm going to press File, Save. You can see I get a paragraph placed underneath. And the division just grows in height depending on what I have inside of it. And as I make my web page bigger, you'll see that it actually starts to look better, and it adjusts to fit the size of my screen. Alright, so now we're going to apply some CSS to these two selectors. So the first thing we're going to do is have a look at where they're nested. So I have a heading 1 which is nested inside an ID of content R. So what I do is start with the parent, which is the division content R. And then with the space, I'm going to put in the selector, which is a heading 1. Now I can apply styles to that particular selector inside that particular division. It allows us again to be a little bit more selective about where we place CSS and gives us more options to do it this way. So the first thing I'm going to do is change the font. So font family is the property that I would like to use, and then I have to put in a value. So I'm going to choose a font that I have saved in my computer, which is called Century Gothic. If the person doesn't have Century Gothic installed, then I would like to go with an Arial style. If they don't have Arial, then any sans serif font will do. So you can see now that that has changed. I'm also going to address my paragraph as well, so I can now say hashtag content paragraph font family. So I'm also going to go with Century Gothic here as well, so that they match. For each of these, I would like my text to align centrally. So I'm coming in here, text, align center, and I will copy and paste that into my paragraph section as well. We can see that's jumped into the center. If there was anything else that I would also like to adjust when it came to these two particular items, I would obviously change them in here. So if I wanted to adjust the color of the font, I could do that in here, but for now I'm going to leave mine as the default black so it's readable, but I could change the color, the size, the font type, the alignment, etc. Okay, so now I have some content on the right hand side of my page, and I'm going to add a table in here to the left that's full of images. So coming back to my HTML, I'm going to remove the content from my Content L division. Make some space, making sure my opening and closing tags are in line. Tab in once because I'm nesting something. and I'm going to open a table. Now inside my table I would like to have 3 rows, and each row to have 2 cells, and those 2 cells are going to hold images. So in total my table will hold 6 images. So the first thing I'm going to do is tab across because it's nested and say table row opens. And inside that table row, nested, I'm going to have some table data. This is where my image is going to be placed. So in order to place an image in, we use the tag img. And now we need to tell it where the source of that image is. Now similarly to the way that we put our background in, we need to go back to the parent folder from the folder that our script is saved in. So we're going back to that ww folder by pressing .. Then want to go into our images folder. We're going to choose one of the images we have saved there. I've numbered mine 1 through 6, so it makes it really easy. I want to take the first image and I close my image tag. So I have a table with 1 row. At the moment, that table row has 1 cell in it, and that cell holds an image. So we can see that an image has popped in there. What we notice is this image is actually far too wide for our division, and because I've set these divisions to be 50% of the page, they start to cross over each other as they get smaller. And we can cause ourselves some issues, but we can adjust that with our CSS later. At the moment, I'm just going to get all of my images placed into the HTML. So in that first table row, I'm going to add another cell with another image in it. Oops, not image 1, we're going to go with image 2 this time. And we can see now that I have 2 images side by side together with each other in their table. So using my CSS, I'm going to adjust these images so that they fit inside this cell and they look a little bit nicer. So coming back here to our CSS, I'm going to start by addressing the division that I'm working with at the moment, which is hashtag content left. And then want to make sure that my table fits nicely inside that content. So I'm going to say the width of my table is 100% of that content L table. So the width of my table is always going to be 100% of the 50% of the container, which is 80% of the whole page. So there's a little bit of math that you need to kind of work out in your head, but essentially I want the table to be the full size of that division, so it's 100%. Now inside that table we have the table data cells. I want them to be equally sized as well. So I'm going to say content L table data, and because there's 2 of them, I would like the width to be 50% so that they're equal. Finally, I want to adjust the size of these images. Now I could go into Photoshop and make them the exact right size pixel-wise, but you never know what sort of size screen people are going to be looking at this in, so sometimes it's easier to use a percentage. So I'm going to say I'm looking at the division content L, at the table data, and the image with inside that table. And the width of that image is going to be 100%. So now my image is the full size of my table data, which is half the size of my table, which is the full size of my content L division. So you can see that that's been adjusting itself as I've been going. So when we press save all, come back over here and have a look, we can see that that table now adjusts so that my images fit perfectly inside it. So now I can add the other 2 rows of my table and insert my 2 images. So the way that I can do that is to create another table row. So you can see I'm still within inside my table. Image source. 3rd image. Another table data cell. Fourth image. Save. Now, because we've applied CSS to all of the images inside all of the data cells, inside all of our table, inside the content L, every image I add into that table afterwards automatically applies the same CSS. So I've gone ahead and added the last 2 images into that table. So you can just double check. I have my division opening and closing here. Inside my division I have a table, so it's indented. Inside my table I have a row which has 2 cells inside it of images. I have another row with 2 images and another row with 2 images. So always double checking that every single tag that we open aligns with its closing tag and that our code is readable and neat. If any of our selectors turn red at any point, we're missing a tag, so you can usually come back to just before the code starts to turn red and realize that we're missing a selector or a closed tag or a little bracket, or there's something that's gone wrong. So we can save all and come back here and have a look at our website. Okay, so at the moment we can see that my content left division has increased in size to fit my table within it, but the content right division is still small because it only has a small amount of content in it. So we want to try and make this equal so that it can be the same length as each other, so that they sit nicely next to each other. Now there are ways that we can go about this. So this light blue colour that we're actually seeing in the background here is the colour of my container. So I could just change the background colour of my other 2 divisions, so my content left and my content right division, to match, and then it would look like they were all the same. I can add more content within my right hand division to push this text down and to make this division larger. So for example, I could come in here and put a series of line breaks. Which will push that text down and make it appear larger. And after my paragraph, I could put in a few of those also, and continue doing that until I felt that the right hand side division was the length that I wanted it. But obviously that can become problematic as I resize my screen. So what I would actually like to do is to make my divisions the same height. And I can do that with my CSS, obviously. So I can come to where my content left division is and my content right division. And now that I can see what content I have, I can add a height in pixels. That suits. So you can see here I've added a height of 300 pixels, 350 pixels. At full size, that's too small. And when I make my page smaller, it's far too large. So pixels is not always the best way to add height, especially when we have been using percentages throughout everything else that we've been doing. So I'm going to remove that height text from my content L. And I'm actually going to add a height in percentage. So I want the height of my content L div to be 100% of the container div that it's inside of. Like so. And I would also like my content right. Low. We can see that that hasn't necessarily done very much because we haven't set a height of our container division, because we haven't set the height of the entire HTML document. So again, we just need to work back as to where things are nested. So our content L and content R are nested inside our container, which is nested inside our HTML. So we just keep going back to the parent item as far back as we can go. So we've made our content R 100% and our content L 100%. We also want to make the height of our container 100%. But our container is inside the body, and we would like our body. Oops, put a semicolon there. We would like our body to have a height of 100%. But our body also has one parent item attached above it as well. So we're going to come in here and we're going to add some CSS to our HTML selector. And we're going to set a height and try 80% and see what that does. Let's try 80% for my screen. So now that we can see, then when we go too big, again, our table starts to come out of that and we'll start to cover our footer. So again, I'm just going to leave that as 100%. I'm going to make full screen. My pages will always be equal and always at 100% there. Okay, so you can have a play around with those widths if you want to. You don't have to have them set to a percentage at all. Like I said, you could have had the background colors changed to make it look better. It's completely up to you in the design. These are just options that you have to adjust the CSS for your content sections. I'm going to leave mine as is for the moment. In the next tutorial, we're going to add a menu bar to our header so that we can link to other pages. And following that, we will put some icons in the footer that will link us to social media.